Thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you for so much for all of you being here. My name is Alan, and as you just heard, I am the co-founder of Sammen om en jobb. Sammen om en jobb is an organization that works with trying to help everyone who comes to Norway with a specific skill set, a higher education of some sorts, find a relevant job where they can use those skills. And we run Norway's largest mentor program for this group, and we also run a digital platform and a network where we try to provide everything that you need as a highly skilled professional who are new to Norway. Handprints is a new initiative which focuses very much on social impact and tries to help people increase their handprint or the social or the positive impact that they have upon the world. And today, when I was asked to come and talk a bit about the skills needed in the workplace of the future, I saw that the hard skills in terms of AI, etc., will be really duly covered afterwards. So I decided to focus on what I have seen through having hundreds of people through the mentor programs, what they struggle with, what their pain points are, and also what has worked for them. So I will go through 10 things that we see are important, not just for finding a job, but for finding a relevant job that fits you, your potential, your interests, and that is also useful for society. And last but not least, being well in the job seeking process, because it is a really important time of your life, and it's a difficult time, especially if it becomes more prolonged. It's also really important to be fine during this process. So I was going to set a timer because when I was practicing, I know I'm quite on the limit, but I forgot. But if you could give me a hands up maybe 5 minutes before, something like that. Perfect. Before getting into the content, I wanted to ask you an easy warm-up question, which is, what is, in your opinion, the meaning of life?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
To answer.
Thank you for taking the joke. Yes, it is a tough question. But there are no correct or wrong answers. Just shout out whatever comes to mind.
Donuts.
Sorry?
Donuts.
Donuts is a good one. What else?
Happiness.
Happiness? Anyone else? This is a really nice one. This was very comprehensive. Maybe you can write it down and share it afterwards, because that was really nice as well. But it goes along the lines of happiness. And for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to go with the definition of Dalai Lama and a big group of other wise people who say happiness and having a positive impact. Those are the two foundations for a meaningful life. And the reason why I start my talk asking you this question is that for the next 40 years, for the duration of your career, you are probably going to spend roughly 80,000 hours at work. That's 1/3 of your time for the next 40 years, or half of your time if you don't count the time you spend sleeping. That's a lot of time. So that means that for having a fulfilling life, it's also super important finding a fulfilling job. So my first tip or advice is to give this proper thought. And the oldest productivity tip in the book is, before you start any kind of more challenging task, to take just a few moments trying to figure out what is the best way to approach this task. So if you want to have a productive day, taking a few minutes to plan that day is really, really useful. If you spend just 1 minute planning, 1% of the time of the task planning, you're likely going to gain that back and much more in terms of productivity. Yet we don't do the same thing with our careers. Dedicating just 1% of these 80,000 hours gives us 800 hours to figuring out what is it that we want to do with our career. Where is it that we would be happiest? So talking with your friends, talking with your family, maybe finding a mentor, also trying things, quitting, giving up, trying something new is super important. We live in a society that's very focused on this persistence. We have to stick it out until the end, but actually giving up is very often the sensible thing to do, because if it is hard, maybe it isn't worth the pain. Maybe your time would be better spent somewhere else. And if you always stick it out until the end, you won't get to test and to find something that might be more suitable. So I won't get more into this, but it's a huge topic, and 80,000 Hours, it's the title of a book and an organization that specializes in this, helping people find, of all stages of their career, find a career that's meaningful not just to them, but that also has a really huge impact on the world. And meningsfullt.no is the Norwegian branch of this that provides free career counseling with the aim of finding a really high impact job. And we can send out this presentation afterwards. The second one is prioritizing yourself, because the work life is changing quicker and quicker and quicker, and it's getting increasingly difficult to predict what are the skills that are going to be relevant 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. But one skill that is going to continue relevant forever is prioritizing yourself and taking care of the most important resource that you have, which is also yourself. And for that, to illustrate this, I want to give you the second and the last big number of the presentation, which is, give or take a couple of thousand. This is the average number of remotely conscious decisions that we make every single day. And that is a lot of decisions. And if you take, a quote I really like is that all of the decisions we make is with the purpose of having a good life. It's in the chase of happiness. We're not really good at making these decisions, however. If we took all these decisions and we put them on top of each other and we organize them after how efficient they are at providing happiness, it will look something like this. Some really good decisions on the top, a lot of decisions in the middle that don't really care, and also a few self-destructive decisions that really don't promote long-term happiness. And it is a bit the same when trying to plan our career. If we took all of the decisions that we're making, some of them will promote the success of our career, and some of them will do the opposite. And there is some overlap between the two. Often what's good for our happiness is also good for our career, and there are some differences. And what I mean to say by this is that the common notion in society is that success will bring happiness. As soon as we land that job, we'll be happy. When we get that raise, we'll be happy. When we get a girlfriend or a boyfriend, we'll get happy. However, in reality, it's very often the opposite way. That once we are happy, then success tends to come more easily. So that ideally, we wouldn't need to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend to be happy. We would be happy first, and then that would be a bonus. Same thing with our jobs. It should be nice to have, not necessary. And for that, I want to challenge everyone here to revisit the to-do lists that probably most people have, and try to spend a month turning that into a happiness list. And a happiness list is just the same, but you prioritize the things that are really important for you, your well-being, make sure that they come first, and then the other aspects tend to come more easily as well. And I have, when I say a happiness list, that's really what I mean. I have a list that I've been using for 5 years, where I note down the things I have found out about myself that I should do every day, every week, every month, in order to be as happy but also as successful as possible. And just one last point, and why this is particularly important in a job-seeking process, is because the job-seeking process is, for many people, one of the most difficult times of life, especially if it takes a bit more time. It can be really mentally draining to be in a job-seeking process. And for many people, getting a job is the solution. Once I get the job, then everything will be fine. However, it's very difficult to find a job if your motivation is not there. If you don't enter the job interview with a positive energy, it's very difficult to get that job. So this should come first. And you don't have to read all of these, but the point here is that mistakenly, people often think that a job is going to solve this. And what I mean by mistakenly is that it's not your name written on a piece of paper called a job contract. That is not what instantly gives you happiness. It's all the things around, all the things that brings. when you have a job, you have to leave the house. You get some sunlight in your eyes, you do some moderate exercise, you meet people, you help people, you learn something new. So you get a lot of things that are associated or that are objective drivers of happiness. And as a job seeker, if you don't have a job, you have to find those somewhere else. That purpose, volunteering, as you mentioned. So there are so many ways of constructing this outside of a job, and that's particularly important as a job seeker. Perfect. And then for the third point, I wanted to introduce myself a bit more. When I was a child, this was frequently how my English homework looked like. I was absolutely awful at languages. It was really, really difficult. So when I had to translate something from English to Norwegian, I often threw a tantrum, and it ended up, the poor Bob Dylan song would often end up like this. And when we started German, it got even worse. And what I figured out was that I'm bad at languages. I hate them, never going to learn them again. And then a lot of years later, I gave it one last try. And then I came across, by coincidence, a different technique that made it much easier for me to learn grammar and vocabulary. It made it easy to memorize this. And what that did was that it made it easy to learn languages, and I started learning more about language learning, studying how to learn languages efficiently. And then suddenly these were things I hadn't learned in school, but I found a better way for me. And now I speak 6 languages, and I give presentations on how to learn languages efficiently. And my conclusion at first from all of this was that, wow, I had found a loophole. I had found this way of learning languages that no one else knew about, and I should use this to my benefit. I should construct my career. Maybe I should teach learning languages. And then a few years later, this happened again. This time with minimalism. I discovered this also by chance, and I found out that I don't need all of the things that I have in my life. In fact, most of my possessions don't make me happy. They actually make me more unhappy, more anxious, so I got rid of them. So we recently moved to Germany, and this fits all my possessions now, with the exception of some juggling gear and a pair of rollerblades. But this was, again, very eye-opening to me, because what society kept telling me was completely different from what I figured out is a better solution. And again, I thought I'd found a loophole. And then when this happened the third time, that was just a few years ago, was when I found out that the myth that we need animal products in order to be healthy is actually what my grandmother had told me, what people had told me, what advertisements on TV had told me. That's not true at all. Often it's the contrary. For most of us, taking these products out is going to be beneficial for our health. And in doing so, also contributing to solving 10 major global challenges at the same time. So this was the third time where I saw that something that society takes for granted is actually not, at least in my opinion, the best approach forwards. And this time, however, finally, because it was the third time, I realized that this was not another loophole, but this was in fact evidence of a tendency that most of the things that we do can be done differently and can be done better. Whether that is language learning, the job seeking process, starting a company on your own, it can be done often, it can be done differently, and often it can be done better. So this comes back to the planning phase, really trying to take a step back and not just repeat what everyone else is doing. Because with the number that I showed you earlier, with 35,000 daily decisions, of course, many of these have to be done on autopilot. If not, our head would explode. So what that means is that we keep repeating what everyone else does, what we've done our whole life. But when we are repeating this, or we're repeating also what especially what our parents has done, because they were with us when we grew up, when we learned how to interact in the world. But we are repeating what our parents did. Our parents are repeating what their parents did. Their parents are repeating what their parents did. So in practice, we are repeating many of the actions and the opinions and the values of people 100 years ago. And people 100 years ago, they were pretty racist, they were quite homophobic, and they did not have very cool views on women, for example. And these issues still haunt our societies because quite a few of us still haven't had the chance to take that step back and to evaluate, does this make sense? Or am I just repeating things that people around me say? And I think this room is quite progressive, so it might sound absurd, but every one of us have things in our life that we repeat, which is not positive nor for us nor for society. And people 100 years from now will definitely look back at us the way we look back at people who lived before us and think, how on earth was it that they elected the leaders that they elected, that they let the genocide happen in Palestine, or that they killed and ate hundreds of millions of other individuals every day. So this ability to try to take a step back, to analyze objectively the things that we're doing. Does it make sense? Is it good for me? Is it good for society? That is a really useful skill, both for us as individuals, but also because this is a skill that is super relevant for the workforce for the future. Because we cannot keep going the way that we are going today, and businesses are starting to realize this. They're starting to shift. They're starting to look for people who also have a mindset that is more progressive, and people who have this ability to look at complex issues in a new and fresh way. Perfect. The fourth, which is one really practical habit that I've had on my happiness list for about a year, is to leave our comfort zone. Almost all change is outside of our comfort zone. And if we stay within our comfort zone, we're very likely to just continue down the same path that we're on today. And being a job seeker involves a lot of change. Eleanor Roosevelt, a former US First Lady, she has a very famous quote. She says that every day we should do at least one thing that we're afraid of. And what is really great about this quote is that it turns it into a habit. Because if we are able to leave our comfort zone with the easy things, speaking Norwegian in the supermarket instead of English, maybe saying hello to someone in the elevator, if we do it in the easy things, we create a habit. It's a skill and a habit. And then it becomes easier to do it also. It becomes almost automatic doing it in the moments that really matter, also for our careers. And then number 5 is to start walking. And this is particularly important, and this is a metaphor. Just start doing whatever it is that you want to do. And this is important because you are entering the labor market in probably the most competitive time in history, because now we are competing with absolutely everyone in the whole world, both because there's more of a global workforce, but also because you have access to the entire world just half a meter away with you at all times. Before, if you were the best musician or the best carpenter, that was probably because you were the only one, because we lived in small villages. But now we are competing against the entire world. And what that means, or that is one problem. And the other part of this problem is that people are very selective with what they show and what they share, which means that it looks as if everyone are succeeding the whole time. We don't see the failures and the struggles leading up to that. And what this does to us is that it makes it, firstly, really hard to get started. It sounds very scary. We are very intimidated by people who does everything perfectly. And if we do start on whatever it is, if it's learning Norwegian, if it's pursuing a career in a certain field, if it's starting something on our own, if it's launching a career as an artist, if we do start, we are also wired to expect instant results, because that's what it looks as if everyone else are having. So this just getting started and embracing imperfection. And in doing so, you also make it easier for others to get started and to be imperfect. And then this is super concrete. Character strengths is something that an institute called the VIA Institute, they have done research into human personalities, and they have characterized these 24 different types of strengths that each of us could have. And there is a lot of research going into this, research on happiness, research on productivity, that says that if you're able to use those character strengths, that's going to give us a lot of happiness, a lot of satisfaction. And there is a lot of talk on find your weak sides and improve them. But it's even more important to find out what your strengths are and to find somewhere where you can apply them. Because the labor market is getting increasingly specific. So if you can figure out what is it that you are innately, and we all are really good at some of these, what is it that you're really good at innately, and where is it that you can apply these? That's going to be really useful. Here's a free quiz to find, to check and to find yours. I will also send out this afterwards. Yes, I haven't seen anything, so I'm good on time. Number 7, I think this is the most important one. I put it in the middle to wake you up a bit, but this to align our desires with our reality. And what I mean by that is that we have the life that we have, the career that we have, and then we have the life and the career that we desire, which is almost always something more than what we have. And what this is called it's called the happiness equation, because the difference between what we have and what we want, this difference here, that translates into suffering, dissatisfaction, and so what we really want to do, so the path to a happy and fulfilled life is trying to close this gap as much as possible. And we can do this in 2 ways. The obvious one that mainstream society really pushes is to try to increase this one, that we improve our reality. We get a better job, or we get even, we get better at whatever we're doing. And that is important in some contexts, but the problem with this is also that as soon as we get up here, this one it just keeps growing, and it doesn't stop at the upper edge of my presentation. It goes on forever. Whenever we achieve something, we will expand what we want. So it's a race without an end. And when this gap gets too big, we end up spending a lot of time in the future, fantasizing and planning the life we would like to have, or we end up spending a lot of time in the past, thinking about the decisions that we made and how we wish we'd made different decisions. So the other way is to try to reduce our desires. And it's super difficult to, just by sheer willpower, to reduce or to stop desiring, to stop wanting anything. But it's more achievable to shift your desires. So try to start desiring something that's more attainable, that is healthier to pursue for you, for the planet. So this is really useful to keep in mind as well. And if you are able to control a bit your desires, so you don't end up in the trap that we have to pursue a better and better and better career, it opens up a lot of possibilities for choosing a career that fits you a bit better, because you can take a step back and you can see, okay, what is it that has more to do with me, what's maybe more useful to the world, and it gives a lot of freedom. Number 8 is to let go of control. In the job seeking process, it's very tempting to try to control absolutely everything, to have the perfect CV, do the perfect interview, and we will, most of us at least, will have quite a few rejections. And if we think we can control everything, any rejection means that we did something wrong, so it's something wrong with us, and that is a fast track to losing one's motivation or even self-esteem. So to realize, or as soon as you've been on the other side of that table, as soon as you've seen how employment decisions are actually made, you'll realize that there is a myriad of different decisions going into that, and few of them have to do with you and your profile. And so this is super, super important to maintain sane throughout the job seeking process. And also, one thing that we see very often is that when you're unsure when you'll find a job, it often becomes the thought that I'm unsure if I'll find a job. And the vast majority of people, they find a job. It can take a few months, maybe some years, but they do find a job. And in the meantime, and even if you don't, you won't starve in Norway. So it will usually work out in the end. The problem is that when we reach the end, when we figure out that, we've already suffered quite a bit of stress and anxiety, which is not good for our health if it's prolonged, if it's constant. So this is something that we talk a lot about with our job seekers. It's easier said than implemented, but if you're able to adopt that mindset and remind yourself early in the job seeking process that it will work out in the end, I don't have to, then you can save yourself a lot of worry and anxiety. And then we touched briefly upon this, but social impact is something that companies have to address now, which means that they need people who are also trained in this. And social impact is something that we can start also on a personal level. It's very much like leaving our comfort zone. It's a bit of a skill, it's a bit of a mindset that the more we practice this, the better we get at this. In fact, all of the 35,000 decisions that I was talking about earlier, you can also organize them after the impact that they have on the world, because they all have some sort of impact on the world around us, positive, negative, or neutral, or more neutral. So if we can learn to identify some of these decisions, change them, I would argue that that would make you more relevant in the eyes of the employer in many cases, and it also will mean that you have something extremely valuable to provide to the employer and maybe more to society as a whole. And why I think social impact is extremely fascinating is that we talk a lot about our footprint. How can we reduce our footprint? But we can only reduce our footprint this much, because most of us have quite average lives. We have to live, maybe we have family abroad, we have to do some things. So even with our best efforts, maybe we can only reduce our footprint a little bit. Our handprint or our positive impact, however, with a few quite easy changes, it can be improved really a lot. This is where the biggest impact is, I would say. And this is super interesting. Last one is, now I've been speaking a lot about things that you have to do, or habits to implement, things to shift, which can sound a bit overwhelming. So I wanted to finish with how to get this a bit for free, in a sense. And what I mean by that is that there are ways that we can do that makes good habits or almost inevitable, and that we can stop our bad habits with not with pure force of will, but more with just making it easy. And I've used this minion here. We are a bit like minions. We just go wherever it's easy to go, or we just follow any direction that is easy. And that means that if it's easier for us to fall in the bad habit than the good one, then we'll end up rolling down and pushing that button. So what we want to achieve when we are job seeking, at any stage of life, but maybe especially in the job seeking process, is that we want to figure out and identify what is it that I can use to kind of counterbalance this. So very simply, if you want to drink more water, leave a water bottle on your table visible. It's really easy, then you've solved it. If you want to eat healthier, you need to remove healthy food from your house, because if you have to go out and buy it, chances are it's much more difficult. And it's the same with job seeking, it's the same with language learning. Make it really easy to start and to do the good thing, make it really difficult to do the bad thing. And then lastly, I would also like to bring one last quote, which is goes something along the lines that we are the average of our 5 closest people. And that's a simplification, but it holds a lot of truth at the same time. And it's because we are very social beings as humans, which means that we adapt very much to the people around us. So if the people around us are sporty, we're more likely to start becoming sporty ourselves. And this is something that's super interesting. This is why parents are terrified of their children getting the wrong friends, because it is a really strong effect. And knowing this, we can use it also to our benefit, especially now that for many of us, some of the 5 people that we have the most contact with each day are not physical people that we meet, but they are influences that we follow, etc. So this is both dangerous, but it also opens up a lot of possibilities. We can really engineer our environment so that we get the right influences. Finding a mentor, of course, is super useful. It can be in an organized program, or it can be outside of a program. Finding a psychoanalyst, those kind of things. When I started Handprints, I'd already been through one startup phase with Sammen om en jobb. I knew how difficult it would be. I knew that if I was left on my own, I would roll down into the side of not starting it, abandoning the project. So I tried very actively to how can I engineer this to make it inevitable to start this project? And me staying here today talking about this is one way of committing even more. So this is super, super interesting. That was it. Just to summarize really quickly, if you are interested in having a mentor to help you find a relevant job, scan that QR code. If you're interested in learning more about social impact, scan that QR code, and then we'll send this presentation out afterwards. Thank you very much.